We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Ray. That is the three Amigos, the perfect show to kickstart your NUFC weekend. No game, of course, this weekend. And my God, what a week it's been. Speculation after speculation after speculation, crap after crap after crap, rubbish after rubbish after rubbish, written by journalists who should know better, written by people on Twitter, or X as it's known now, who haven't got a clue. It's been an absolute shitstorm of a week, I would say, for Newcastle United, and we haven't even kicked the ball. And there's a rant for you in the first 30 seconds. You don't even need Mitch and Steve to say it. Anybody who gets carried away or believes in any of these stories circulating at the minute needs their head examined. They really do. Absolutely crazy in the last 5 or 6 days, especially. Trippier going to Bayern Munich. We've got Bruno going to PSG. We've got Isak up for sale at 150 million. We've had players who are no longer going to kick a ball again. Newcastle are skint. Then the same journalist who writes Newcastle are skint is saying that they're in for a nana at Manchester United. Honestly, it's crazy. And this shows you that journalists in this country and Newcastle United, people who cover Newcastle United for a living, are only interested in one thing: clickbait.
Yeah.
Because there's no such thing as a bloody newspaper anymore.
Well,
nobody goes and buys a paper. It's all online. You've got people across the board being sacked at newspapers because there's no income coming in. The only way they can make money is by sticking out rubbish and lies under misleading headlines on the internet. And anyone believes it, more fool you.
And when it's to do about Newcastle United, it's always bloody negative, isn't it? Do you ever see never have a positive
Never
story?
a positive story, George. Never a positive story. And that's because we're owned by the, PIF is the main shareholder, 80% shareholder. And I put some of the blame to what we've witnessed this week down to the ownership, down to the people they employed, Darren Eales, especially coming out and saying what he said, followed by Eddie Howe's press conference. Those two things. And Eddie Howe, you can't really blame the guy. He's put in the middle of a situation, as previous managers have been, answering non-related football questions at a press conference. Darren Eales is in charge behind the scenes of making things work. He's not the person who brings in the sponsorship deals. We know that comes down to Silverstone. But Darren Eales is the man who came in, quite happy to take the plaudits and praise when everything's going well, sleeping in bed with 2 meaningless trophies, standing drinking pints with people down at Wembley. But listen, coming out and saying what you said, I personally think, and fair play, if you watch these podcasts, please take this as criticism from a critical friend. I genuinely feel personally that it was ill thought of. That's the best way to put it. Because what it's done is create this storm that we're seeing. It might have been deliberate. I don't know. Maybe this is what you wanted. Maybe you wanted to throw a red herring out there or a dead cat story out there, so everyone's looking over there while you're doing this over here. And that might be the case. And in the next 2 weeks, we might see 2 or 3 players go out. We might see 2 or 3 players come in, and everything in the garden will be rosy. But that's not really the way it works for Newcastle United. And believe you me and the other 3 guys sitting on this podcast tonight know only too well, because we've been there, we've done it, we've got the T-shirt, and we've got the battle scars to prove it. And we have been there and seen and done it and got the T-shirt. You haven't. You've only been here a short period of time. You need to listen to the right people, listen to the right podcasts, and get things right and move in the correct way, because otherwise this whole thing that you've built up is going to come tumbling down, because the foundations you should be building should be on cement and concrete. And at the moment, you're building them on Arab sand, and it's not looking good as far as I'm concerned as a supporter. And people ask me why I'm not involved in the football club and why I haven't put myself forward for fans forums and stuff like that. This is the reason. So you can have an opinion and you can tell them straight when they're doing things wrong. And at the moment, Newcastle United are getting so much wrong. And I very rarely say anything on here. I'm usually a conduit to everybody else on the channel. But I'm starting to get very, very annoyed and very angry about the way things are going with the football club. And I think rightly so. And Kevin Myers sent me a message in the day for this week. He says, "Hi, Steve. How are you doing, pal? Best wishes from an expat in Thailand. Steve, can I ask you to raise the subject of Dan Ashworth? I thought Dan was an open guy and a transparency was one of his priorities. Given the links to his potential move to Manchester United, can you debate on any one of your great shows why has Dan not kept the Geordie fans up to date by either confirming he's had discussions with Sir Jim Ratcliffe or that he hasn't had discussions with Sir Jim Ratcliffe? And what does he actually feel about this? Is he seeking permission from PIF, or have PIF given Manchester United permission even to talk to Dan? This uncertainty is not helpful to us fans who are trying to understand the future of our club." So, Mitch, you've heard me rant. I've took up 7 minutes with that, and I think I feel a lot better getting it off my chest. But I think from Kevin's position, it's just another one of those unanswered questions. What the hell's going on with Dan Ashworth? And I think a lot of the uncertainty around the club has come since that link developed.
Understand Kevin's uncertainty, and I mentioned it myself maybe it's last week, or certainly on one of the shows in the last week. This week's gone like a rocket, so I've got the idea. But certainly, it's the not knowing, it's the uncertainty, and why haven't the club just come out and said, "Bang, let's end this discussion now"? Because they haven't, and that's on the club. Newcastle United, let's go back in time before we sat and spoke and shite on YouTube when we were doing other things, but we were still having these same conversations, just usually around a bar table with a pint. Newcastle United used to be one of the easiest clubs to report on. Why? It leaked like Willy's bucket. Stuff used to come out of the club, left, right and centre, and everybody used to chit-chat, and the news always got out one way or the other. One of the things I'm delighted with the ownership is that that's pretty much at an end. The sources that used to leak, like I say, have either been moved out or they've been told to shut it. And that's pretty evident. Now, a lot of things is guesswork, speculation, half-truths, and buried in that are smoke and mirrors, I believe, deliberately laid by the club. Certainly, I think you've nailed Darren Neal's statement on that. The figures that were released with it didn't include new sponsorships, didn't include other things that have gone on since. You've always got to remember when they talk about financial reports, they're always a year behind. And so anything going forward, you're very much goodling in the dark. It's why I believe we do have capacity to act in this window if we wish. However, more uncertainty about who's actually making the decisions, who's picking the players, who's adding the players to the squad, who's deciding who gets contract extensions, etc., seems to be further veiled in mystery as well. it's a challenge. It's a challenge for the journalists who, you know, when I see somebody like James Hunter saying this is going to be my last week reporting on the Chronicle. Yes, he's red and white, but he's been part of the Chronicle since I was part of the Chronicle in one way, form or another. And he's a stalwart and he reports well and he reports about the Mackems very well and fairly, usually. He's not one of the ones you could say was ever deliberately biased one way or the other. He just called it as he saw it. And he used to get some stick for that from the red and white side of things. When I say he's being let go by the Chronicle, that tells me the direction that our paper's headed in is not very clever at all. We're dumbing down. We're going down to the level of clickbait, and that's the challenge we have. Is that, you know, what some of the journalists have to do, it all matters about clicks and interest, and therefore do we lose some of the proper investigative stuff? Absolutely. Let's have a little gloat while people are talking about Jassim's failed bid for Man United. Why is it that us here flapping my chops on YouTube, stupid bloody dentist who knows nothing in Dubai and his daft mate who's in Bahrain can feed stuff back to you lads, and then Steve can do a bit more digging on a few things, and my dad can ask a few connections about who he's connected to. And we called that right all along from day one. And I even passed some of that and some of the things we had early on that made it just look like Bin Zayed Group on steroids. And why would we know that? Because me and Steve sat round the bloody table in the head offices of Bin Zayed Group for an entire bloody day. It stunk. It smelled all the same. And I gave one of the journalists, so I won't name because it's not fair, everything we had. And he still wouldn't run the story. He still wouldn't go with it. He still wasn't brave enough to put his head above the parapet about what the consensus story was. Even though the consensus story was a pile of shite. And because if him booking the trend, taking flack off other journalists, impacted on how his articles were being taken by his employer, it would have probably cost him his job. So bye-bye proper investigative journalism. Hello, writing stories for clicks. And that must be tough. For some of them, that must be really tough. The ones who are, you know, dyed in the wool in the proper way of reporting things. What the club's doing, because they've tightened down on leaks and they've gone, they're now, like you say, with that speech in blether from Eels seems to be a pleading poverty. And it may be a distraction. Anybody who tells you otherwise is purely speculating, and this is the problem. Speculation turns into stories which are taken as fact at face value by too many people because they see something on social media that's a condensation of that story in a few lines. And then when you dig it a bit more, there's nothing there. Take the latest one with that Adam Crafton was running with about our chairman in connections to PIF. And you dig through that story, it's not a new story. We're talking about this on Jodie's here, Jodie's there. It's an ongoing saga of lawsuits between this particular family and PIF. That particular family has lost all the previous suits and is trying to run them through as many courts as they can to try and get some sort of leverage. This latest one is a grandstand stunt because they managed to send some papers to Newcastle United. So there you go. The people who grab onto that and use it for their own stories to put a certain spin on it, say, oh, look at this, and this is really serious, and we should be reconsidering owners and directors. It's not going to change a damn thing. Nothing. Yet you run it like it's something that people can get hold of. And then we've got, you know, we're back into the human rights discussions. We're back into the geopolitics discussions. Thank God we're used to it now. Thank God we've had a little bit of training. And I think as a fan base, sometimes people will say we're being sports washed. We're not. We've just got really good bullshit censors now. we know and can almost predict what's coming and how people are going to use a certain thing. And then when you dig at it, the substance just isn't there. And never was, but it'll get somebody some clicks somewhere and get somebody some interest somewhere, and therefore it'll keep their employers happy because it's bringing in the advertising money via social media and all of that. It's a much more complicated game than it ever used to be. Gone are the days of Alan Oliver being wide, telling people they were wide of the mark, because Alan knew what was going on because they told him. Let's be honest. Gibbo will tell you the same. The amount of stuff he must have been told verbatim. And can you say this? And can you say that? Journalists dream. And that's what we're not now, which in some ways is fantastic. But it now leads to situations like we've got now, where the slightest little hit on social media and things go into meltdown. And everybody's, you know, I still can't get over one of the other things that amazed us was the sensationalist headline: Joe Linton may have played his last game for Newcastle United. Dear me. That's headlines for drama. Yeah, he may have. But he hasn't. You know, and I think we all need to sometimes just pump the brakes and take a deep breath before we jump and bite on something, before we need you to react to something. And I think we are in a position, I'm still convinced, all of our transfer planning is aimed at the summer. The thing that's thrown a spanner in the works has been this ridiculous injury situation that, you know, you really, I doubt we'll ever see for it again for a long time. However, I will be disappointed if things can't be juggled a little bit to help Eddie out in this window. We also have to remember, has there been much movement anywhere else in the window? Not a lot, really.
Only one transfer.
Yeah, you know, this is crazy. It shows that either everybody's shitting themselves about FFP, which, if we're led to believe, is possibly the case, because they said it was Forest and Everton, but another 4 could have been named, or everybody's dancing around the handbags trying to get the best deal. And we're going to see a hell of a lot of movement in the last 5 days, which then that comes back to the whole transfer window thing being a mockery, because that's what happens every year. All of a sudden, the last 48 hours is helter-skelter, because everybody doesn't want to put their cards on the table first. And that's why, in my opinion, transfer windows don't work anymore. They don't serve the purpose they were meant to intend. All that happens is this 1 month worth of transfers will be done in 48 hours, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous, if you ask me. And then, you know, we're back there. Well, we've let this one go through because the fax didn't work properly and it was sent at a minute past midnight. I mean, my God, is that really the best we can do in professional football in England? To rely on 80s technology? It's super frustrating. We should be old enough and bad enough at the game ourselves by now, but I understand why we're not, because we care so much.
Yeah, I would agree. And is it any coincidence, again, as well, that some of these journalists writing these sensationalistic stories about players have now got YouTube channels, who've now decided to venture into the world of YouTube, an independent place where they can have their say, but where they can also make money? I don't think so. I think it's all connected. I think journalists are looking for a way out of it, and a way out of the rat race, because, you know, time is of the essence. The clock is ticking on good old-fashioned newspaper journalism, and I think people are trying to create personas and images, and off the back of the takeover. And if they can't get a job with the club, they can get a job talking about the club or against the club. You know, that's the way that's the way of the world now. And somebody put a point up before. What was it now? Where was it? Yeah, Benny. The plethora of football podcasts has seen an explosion of nonsense clickbait content. Yeah, and a lot of the podcasts, who, you know, some of, you know, I've told most people I don't get a chance to watch them. I've watched at least one episode of most of them at some point, but they're now jumping on the bandwagon. I've scrolled through the NUFC podcasts today, and 85% of them have got some kind of clickbait story on about the transfers. I try to watch them occasionally, but I just don't have the time. But they're just regurgitating the stuff that they're seeing on Twitter or on one of these journalist stories, and it's a non-news story because Newcastle haven't commented about it. Some people are feigning false anger about it. I can't believe Trippier's going. I can't believe Joe Linton's going. He's not. Who said he is? You know what I mean? It's an article. It's a headline in a paper. And this is why it's just so frustrating, guys. If I had hair, I would pull it out. I really would, because that's how frustrating and annoying it is. And that is just a minor thing. That's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things at the moment. I've had conversations with people about, and we're not going to start on tickets today. We haven't got time. It's only an hour and a half. People talk about tickets and how this whole thing about the ground, which, let's face it, Stu, Steve, and Mitch have all talked about this over the last 6 months on any of our podcasts that they do. We think, as a collective on these platforms that are put on these shows that are put out, that the intention is always going to be to build a new ground. And slowly but surely, they're going to push, the working class fan is virtually out of the ground already. The middle class fan is getting pushed to one side and, testing the boundary to see how much you can pay. But, you're sitting there and most of you out there watching the show will be the same as me. You're sitting there considering going, right, okay, my 10-year deal's up soon. I think I've got one more season. What am I going to do if my season ticket goes to £1,200? Can I justify spending £1,200 each year on going to watch the football club I love? And that's the situation where lots of us are going to be in the course of the next, 2 to 3 years. Some of you are already in that position. Some of you don't go to the games now because of that. And that's where we're at. We're now going to have to make those kind of decisions. And then some of us will be pushed out then until a new stadium's built. And then, potentially we'll be able to go back, but we'll never have the loyalty points we had because they'll have been removed because you'll have got no season ticket. The club's changing, and God, they say be careful what you wish for. The takeover was great because we got rid of Mike Ashley and we got rid of everything that was going around, with that. But you didn't really think about the consequences, like what we're seeing with all this rubbish that's been written, and it's always been written about Newcastle, but it is getting worse now. Sorry, it's been a bit of a moan from me, but sometimes you just need to blow your top to feel a bit better, and that's where I am today, unfortunately. Steve,
tearing my hair out. I love that line, Steve. I was thought you were going to come straight to me at that point. I was panicking. I can't disagree with anything that you either you or Mitch have come up with there. Let's talk about the gentrification of football. It's not just Newcastle United; it's plenty of other clubs. When you read what's going on right across the Premier League and lower down, fans, the regular fans are up in arms about ticket and price. And it's not long ago, Steve, that we were told that the cost of going into the ground was incidental to the TV money that was coming in. And in theory, there was nothing to stop a football club like Newcastle United virtually giving those tickets away for free because it made so little difference in the bigger realm of how much it was costing for fans going through the door. That seems to have suddenly changed. We've gone from a £27 a game ticket to a £47 a game ticket in 18 months. And it'll carry on going that way. And as you said, it's not going to be long till it's £1,200 minimum for a season ticket. The facilities aren't changing for the standard ticket owner. And there might be some slaps of paint going around. And it's, as I say, it's the same everywhere. And it's quite sad, really, because the fans are the lifeblood. The working class man is the lifeblood of the Premier League. We keep hearing also about how our league and the 72 in the EFL and the 20 in the Premier League, that's the history, the lifeblood of the game, etc. And yet it's been whittled away. But every time a club looks like it's in financial peril lower down the league, they come back to the fans, and it's all about the fans. And we're going to save this club's has to be saved for the fans. And then somebody else comes along and ruins it, and it's a mess. I listened to I think it was the head of the EFL, Rick Parry, the man who brought in the parachute payments for the EFL for relegation and promotion. And he actually said that, you know, it was the only way that football could be saved was if fans started to buy clubs, because we can no longer trust owners. And I just creased at that point, and I thought, have you any idea what you're saying? This is just, it's just getting preposterous now. It's like this vicious circle that we're going around. You talk about the press. I mean, if we use the local press, we use the Chronicle as an example. The Chronicle, unfortunately, is going down the same line as local radio's gone. We're lucky that on local radio in the northeast that we still have Radio Newcastle to an extent, which covers an awful lot of the football, both for Newcastle and Sunderland. We're lucky in that respect. But for the rest of local radio, you're basically getting just a run-up of Radio 2. You're getting a run-off of Radio 5 in the evenings. The evening radio's gone, the coverage. The lunchtime radio, poor. The breakfast radio shows that we used to have that incorporated local news and events, gone. And it's the same with the TV. You know, Look North now covers Scarborough, for goodness sake. What happened there? How did that happen? That's now the Northeast. And it's all whittling its way from the south and destroying the local regions as they stand. I suppose that's a bit of a rant as well. We can go on with Darren Eales and we can rant about that. I think the problem with Darren Eales is that what he's trying to implement in Newcastle, it worked well in America. It fits absolutely perfectly in America, where you go on and you can, you know, people will hang on your every word and, you know, they'll accept everything that you're saying. They're not going to come back and criticize you or anything like that. But it doesn't work in Newcastle, because the words that come out of Derek Eales' mouth are the lifeblood, the absolute lifeblood for so many people. Newcastle is the lifeblood, and it's the oxygen that draws it in, isn't it? You know, and anything he says, will be misconstrued by somebody, whether it's the press in the south, whether it's the press in the north, whether it's fans, whether because we've got this social media that allows fans to really, I suppose, in one stream, rock the boat, because that's what it does. Because one man's opinion is another man's sort of angst, isn't it? You know, and something to get rattled about. But at the end of the day, because we've spoken about Darren Eales, let's remember Darren Eales is the CEO. Darren Eales is responsible for ticketing. He's responsible for the shambles that we have with our ticketing, both for home and away. He's responsible for supporter services. He's responsible for the focus groups that are now out there. He's responsible for whoever he put in place to implement focus groups that are now controlled by someone external to the football club, but are going to have an important part to play in where the direction the football club goes in the future. And at the end of the day, it's moved, it's shifted in the last 18 months. It's certainly shifted on social media. It's no longer Amanda and me, Dad, who are, and to a lesser extent, Jamie, the face of Newcastle United. It's when it suits him, Darren Eales. He comes on and he speaks and then he disappears and we'll probably not hear from him until the window opens again in June, or until we get to a cup final or a cup semi-final. And it's an opportunity for him to again stand with the working class man and have a pint with her before a cup final and do his tour of various places where various fan groups are. That's what he'll do. He needs to change. If you're going to have these workshops, do what the Trust did back in 2009, 2008, 2010. Go out there and run regular road shows. Go down to the working men's clubs. Go down to the bars in Newcastle. Don't invite people and have it as an audience that you've chosen. Just go to a club and have it with its members. You know, do it that way. Get out on the road. Do the hard yards and get to understand what the real passion is out on Tyneside, and just keep listening and keep focusing. But if you've got your own your own direction that you think the football club's be heading, then, you know, be careful because it'll come back and bite you on the backside. I suppose that's a bit of a rant, isn't it, as well, you know? But
you're right, though, Bowen. You listed those things there with Darren Eales. My mind's on one thing today, but you've just listed another couple of things, which, you know, we could do a show on each of those topics that you've mentioned. The fans, the new fans advisory board, never seen as much fallout from that since the fans liaison committee. Ticketing, the cup final was an absolute joke. You know, we're absolutely upper height. Fans, you know, are all upper height. That's the best way to describe us. And people saying, I've never seen me so angry. Well, yeah, I'm just sick. I'm just sick of the whole thing. I really am. And it's because the constant merry-go-round of, you know, stuff that you see on social media. You see, you know, people message you. You know, you're speaking to people. You know, and that's our choice. We comment on football, but if we're not going to give it as honestly as we can, then what's the point? Do you know what I mean? What's the point of doing this? So when they need called out, when they need to be told that they're doing something wrong, then this is the platform to do it. This isn't a kiss backside platform. This isn't a platform that's going to, you know, say, oh yeah, Newcastle's doing well. Can we have some free tickets, please? This is us saying, you know what? You're messing this up, and we've held our tongue really for six, 7 months. We've said nothing, but you know, the gloves are off with me now. I'm not very happy about it, and that might not mean anything to some people who watch this, but you know, for me personally, I think the club needs to be held to account for the appointment of Darren Eales in particular, and I think Eales needs to get a grip, or he needs to potentially. The club need to look at replacing him instead of all the rubbish that we're hearing about players going. That's where I'm at the minute. It's as simple as that.
I understand exactly where you come from, Steve. If I was to defend the club on anything, I would say that when you look at the Crafton article that was in The Athletic, 99% of what Crafton wrote was already out there in the public domain. 1% of it wasn't, and that 1%, if not less than 1%, was the bit that said that the postman had arrived at anyone with a letter from Mr. Al-Ramayan. That was the only bit that we weren't aware of. That was the only bit of new news. And as for the human rights groups that are out there, if those human rights groups had any nous about them, they would have known about the 99% of the article as well. And the only bit that they would have focused on was the letter, but they didn't. So, you know, I mean, that's a kind of defense, if you like, for us to, as fans, to get behind the football and not to worry. But on the rest of it, yeah, I'm 100% behind on that.
If you don't mind us diving in again, somebody made a really good point to me today on Twitter. I was having a bit of chat about the whole situation with that article in particular. And he's quite right. It shouldn't be a dentist in Dubai putting the article straight.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. You know, yes, being in this region makes you acutely aware of some of the, not the geopolitical, just the internal politics that go on with families in the Middle East. And it's not the Western way of doing things, but it's so far removed from it. But he's right. The point he makes is valid. It shouldn't be me sitting on Twitter or sitting here calling things out and putting things straight. Why aren't the people paid to do the journalism calling it out and saying, well, there's this and there's this and there's this? I've even seen George Coulton and Chris Waugh getting criticism because they're saying nothing.
Yeah, George
somebody else who works for the same publication is reporting a different way.
It's too close to the club.
Absolutely.
He was close to the club during the takeover. He was Amanda and Mairdad's go-to during the takeover. And then we saw the photograph of him and that girl from True Faith, is it, who they were sitting on the train with Amanda. Yeah, we can all bump into people and get a selfie, but that looked a little bit too closey for me. And George, listen, I've got no problem with journalists being close to the club. You know, it happened under Rafa. It's happened under everyone that we've known. in all the years that we've supported Newcastle United. You've just mentioned Alan Oliver. He was close to Freddie Shepherd, so he got his stories direct from the club. It happens.
Yeah.
Got nothing. I've
You
got
know,
no problem. I've got
yeah,
no problem
you
with
know
that.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't say that you're not. You know, that doesn't mean that you don't hold people accountable if they're not doing anything, if they're doing things wrong. And look, you know, Darren Eales for me, I thought when he came in, I had a brief conversation with him at Wembley after the cup final. You know, you've got to give people a chance. You've got to give people time to bed in. Well, you know, you've bedded in now, and I just think you've gone about it all wrong. This isn't Atlanta. This is Newcastle United, and I think there's been a complete misunderstanding, misjudgment of this fan base, because this fan base as a whole is divided. It's been divided for years for different reasons. We've gone into it on Fans Disunited podcast, which is on here on a playlist. Watch it. There's 3 or 4 shows, and you know, that explains why a lot of the arguments happened. But you know, divide and conquer among supporters is the best way to separate people, and you know, so that there's no uprising to things that you want to do. But look, there are things gone right, but there seems to be lots of things. There seems to be lots of things that are going wrong, and lots of them are falling within Darren Eales' area. And I just think there's been a lack of reaction, and coming out and saying what he said is what's led to all of this. And you know, I would say that agents play their part. Yes, they do. Of course they do. You know, is Joe Linton's agent the one who's leaked the story about, you know, the contract situation, because the contract's coming towards an end, and he wants this and he wants that? It could be, but I still say that the speculation that's coming from journalists who you think would want to have a good relationship with Eddie Howe and the club are the ones who, you know the difference between the club putting something out and an agent putting something out. So they're, you know, it's just a mess. It really is. George, people are asking if your internet's on the blink, so we'll come to you. give you a chance to speak.
No, I'm just enjoying. I'm enjoying the conversation. But what I say to you all, go back 2 months. I sat here saying to you, I love this takeover, and you know I've expressed that in lots of ways, including in Saudi Arabia, I gather. The one thing, you remember this, I've been supporting this club for 75, 76 years. Went to my first game when I was 4 years of age. The one thing that they're still struggling to get right, and some of the things you lads are saying, exactly part of it, is how they treat the fans at the moment. It's just been a nightmare. And, you know, there's a whole range of things. And I've got to say that some of the other things they've been talking about, the management style bothers me. It's not Dan Ashworth's role to tell people what he's doing, surely. The people that could quash all them stories are his bosses. Is he going? Is he not going? That's up to them. If they want to squash it, they could do it tomorrow. They could do it in 5 minutes. A couple of lines in a paper or on a screen somewhere, and that would be the end of it. But because nobody's saying anything, they all pick up on it and make it bigger than it is, or stretch it further than they want to. And because nobody contradicts them, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's Newcastle United all over, sadly. But as to regards the statements they made the other day, I think I said then at the time when I first heard them that it was them pouring water on expectations. But it went further than that, sadly, because it hasn't just gone. It's allowed those outside the club, particularly in the press, who don't particularly seem to like the club, and I think that goes without saying, to make their own agenda, their own stories, and that's quite depressing. This last couple of weeks, I've taken stock of how much you lads did, and yeah, I had a little bit to play, but you lads in this Manchester United stuff. How can serious journalists, who all have got to do is a little bit of digging on the internet, I mean, even a stupid thing is to find out if the bloke had an office, and he didn't have. You know, he didn't have an address, and yet he's bidding for $4 billion or something for Manchester United. Come on, you know, and that is just it's mind blown that you lads could do all of that long before any of them did.
And I even gave that all to someone.
Yes.
All my concerns, every link I'd found, every contradiction I'd found, the first time 9-2 Foundation was mentioned. Valentine's Day, by the way. And all of that. And still nobody was prepared to act. Yeah, no. I get it. It's from some daft dentist in Dubai who's talking out of his arse. I get that. It's fine.
But it's just part of a whole mess about, not just about our club. I mean, anybody that's interested in football, I don't know if you're going to talk about the Masters things later on, or can I talk about it now?
Talk about it now, because we've only got we're only on until 5 to 6. Obviously, I've got an event tonight.
I'll try and do it before then. I watched that, and I don't always look at parliamentary things, but it wasn't just depressing from a football point of view. It was depressing from a political point of view. He was, half the time he was on there, he could have been, he might as well have been talking to the top of his hat, because the MPs that were sitting around the table didn't do any homework. They could have tore him to bits if they'd just done a little bit of homework, and they didn't bother. I mean, here he is trying to explain how competitive the Premier League is. Well, somebody should have asked him, well, how many clubs have won the title since the Premier League came into existence? And that'll tell you how competitive it is, and how many clubs have gone up and down like yo-yos since the Premier League came into existence, particularly in the last decade. Nah, nobody was even bothered. And that's part of the fact that politicians see it as a non-sport in some ways. If it was rugby or something else, a horse race, and by God, they'd have their facts then. So it's just a whole mass of things for me that leave me cold in with reaction to the game, but more to join what you're saying, Steve Wraith, cold in reaction how people regard fans and how the club look like they're regarding fans now, and that's quite depressing.
Can I just add, George, as well?
Yes.
What disappoints me in the last, and I don't know whether you agree or not, but in the last week to 10 days, what's disappointed me the most is how it's become so apparent now that we as a fan base, have become more account based than we are what's happening on the pitch based.
Yes.
We're now all talking about how we can balance the books, what needs to be done to balance the books, who are we selling? We're not talking about what we need to improve on the pitch. We're talking about what we need to improve off the pitch. But we're talking about who needs to be sold and why they need to be sold to move forward. So we're talking about the 2 steps back to make the 3 steps forward. But we know that, I don't know about you, but if we go 2 steps back, very rarely in football do you get those 3 steps.
You never get there. You never get there. Absolutely, Steve.
Remains, and that's what we're literally having it. It happened under Ashley because we were so desperate to find out what the financial situation of the football club was. But now we are so money-based, account-based, looking at and trying to understand the machinations of amortization when we're not qualified to, etc., to get a grasp of like being football supporters, as in the team.
Absolutely.
The way that the team plays, what the team does on the pitch, who's having a good game, who's having a bad game, what Eddie needs to do to put this right, how the injuries occurred, and who can come in and do what during that. But no, we've completely changed as football. Maybe that's the way football also is heading, because it's happening at every other football club as well.
Well, that may be, but that's to find all that very sad from a fan point of view. I've never known in all the years I've supported the club, made it feel occasionally, just like Steve said, can you really afford to go now? If it gets to that stage, my goodness, what a change. how far we've come from the days when if Newcastle won on a Saturday, production in the shipyards went up 20% on a Monday. You know, that's where I come from, and I think there's still a lot of that about. By the way, if I could say a positive thing to John and all the lads at Blue Line Taxis who put their cabs away for 2 hours to watch us on a Wednesday night and on a Friday. Thanks, John. I was in his cab this morning and he talked my legs off. I really was appreciated. Really lovely. So thanks, John and the boys at Blue Line Taxis. There you are. That's a positive thing. No, you lads have said it all. But for me, it gets back to the basic thing that I've been twittering on about for quite a few weeks. Is everything's gone great, but not for the fans, and that's desperate. It really is desperate. And again, to support what you're saying, if Darren Eales wants to know what's about the club, you're right. The one thing that Ashley did get right, although he still made a mess of it, he went down the big market. He went in the pubs, and he went in the clubs, and you know, people knew him and were prepared to talk to him. He blew it in the end, but that's the only way they'll really get to know. And do they want to wait until people are sort of organising boycotts and that sort of thing because they're fed up? No, that's not the way we're going, surely. So
no,
there you
definitely
are.
not.
No.
All right, halfway through the show, time for the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks again to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you'd like to order some, then give them a call on 01768 210 102. Go to the website mrvickies.co.uk or drop them an email, info@mrvickies.co.uk. A big thanks to United Group Travel. They're a family firm based in Morpeth with pickups throughout the Northeast. No strangers on our tours, just people you haven't met yet. They've got a presence on Facebook and a website, unitedgrouptravel.com. If you want to make a booking, give them a call on 01670 632 460 or mobiles 0791 666 4174 0795 71 41654. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. Let us look after you in your time of need. They're based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead, and you can contact them at their website, darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Email darren@darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or give them a call, 0191 478 2730. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And a big thanks to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. If you want to help the channel, hit the thumb up to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and share to your other social media. You can also pay a one-off fee of £25 to get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. Go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and click membership, or put your smartphone over this QR code. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make some donations virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. We're also a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast providers. Just search NUFC Matters. I'm also a part of the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. You can listen to that Monday to Friday, 7 till 9 at thetooneuk.com. Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters. It is the three amigos. Probably not get through everything tonight. And thanks to those who sent in lookalikes and tweets of the week. Some of them didn't make it in time. I will show them next week. All right, Tune lookalike. Now, we got sent these last week. And honestly...
Wow.
I think these are excellent. I know it means a bit of cut and paste for most of you guys out there, But this really it's a unique way of doing it, lads, isn't it?
Clever.
So the first one there, Sherilyn Fenn and Elizabeth Taylor. The next one, Daniel Radcliffe and Elijah Wood.
Wow.
And the other one, Kristen Charles and Valerie Benesson. So very good. Thank you very much for them. I've got a few more of those to get through. They're never quite as good as these ones. Steve Hasty from Andrew.
It's a budgie.
Perched on a log. This one of me from Gary Scott. He says, someone's not going to make it up this train. Is this a Steve Wraith lookalike? Possibly. Back in the door days, Gary. Back in the door days. This one got sent to us by a few people. We've got, of course, Jason Tyndall and the return of Gladiators.
Very good.
Very good. Yeah, I did like that. This was, very good from Legacy Magpie. Is that Steve Wraith when he had hair? Bottom left.
That is unbelievable.
Excellent. Really did like that one. But again, thank you for that. James May, anybody? Susan Boyle?
Wow. That might have been how he looked when they pulled him out the car.
And Colonel Sanders and Rod Stewart.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
This one, Fizz from Coronation Street.
I hope she's not watching.
And Jimmy sent this one in. Mitch.
Wow.
I refute being a MAGA.
David Cook, I did get yours. Yours will have to make it into next week's show. This one was the winner from Johnny Allen, Stephen McGann, and Bernie Slavin.
Yeah.
Aye.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So well done, John. Thank you for your submission this week. We will make it a bit longer next week. We'll have a 2-hour show. But that you look like he's today. John Askew, good evening. Says, hello, everyone. Is our next game the most important one of the season? Aside from the usual stuff they spout, it could be the start of a triumphal run. John, we'll try and accentuate some positives now that we've had a rant. The next game, of course, isn't this weekend. Weekend off for Newcastle is
Yes,
Fulham
Josh,
away.
it's not this weekend, it's next weekend.
Fulham away in the FA Cup, live on ITV4, 7 o'clock kickoff. Very inconvenient kickoff time for Newcastle. But yeah, look, the fixtures after that, Mitch. Aston Villa away. We know that's going to be tough on the Tuesday. Luton at home. Notts Forest away. Bournemouth at home. And then Arsenal away. But I guess it's that group of 3 games. Luton, Forest, Bournemouth. Maybe that John's looking at with a little bit of optimism.
And I would... also include Villa away in that. I don't think they've been great the last few games. So for me, is the next game the most important? Well, I think keeping some interest in the FA Cup because of how special it is to Newcastle United. And the fact that we had this run where we tumbled out of everything. And we were getting slapped in the face left, right and centre. To keep that going, to keep that alive, and then hopefully get a decent draw in the next round. Keeps a little bit of positivity and hope around everyone, not just the fan base, but the club as well, going forward. So I think it's very important that we go into that game with the strongest 11 we can. We'll certainly go into there refreshed. I think the players finally admitted in interviews just before this break how they were looking forward to this break. But we're going to also go into that game very well prepared because we're not just doing recovery and analysing the previous game and trying to get ready for the next game. We've got a focus. We've got a single focus, a solitary focus. We always seem to come out swinging better when we have that. So, yeah, I think it's very important because we can then use that to feed off to go into the Villa game, then go into that little run of 3 games We've shown nothing certain by our performances against London Forest and Luton over the Christmas period. We just have to focus on what we can do, focus on our game, focus on ourselves, not worry about noise outside of it. Bring it all together. We know what we can do. We've already shown that. And so there's no pressure on sort of showing what we can do. It's more, can we keep it together, get focused, get, refreshed. I think, also, Kev, you're right about Wilson saying it was good to get a break from other players. There's no doubt our squad has experienced, not just with the injuries, but with the intensity of the fixtures list. The 2 or 3 of them said, I go back to that interview that Dan Byrne gave to the BBC 3-4 weeks ago about how much more respect he had for players at Man U and Liverpool and Man City, about being able to keep the mental focus on in the middle of all of this. That's something they wanted, but they've never experienced, and they'll all come out of it better players for it. I'm quite sure of that. So we can sit and focus on this game at Fulham now as a springboard, as an absolute springboard, and then take it from there.
Okay, did Mitch give the answer about Dan Ashworth? We were talking about Dan Ashworth earlier on. I think we just said. I know he's come out and in various news outlets they've reported that he's not up for the job, but he hasn't come out and said anything direct, has he? That we've heard, hasn't he?
No, he hasn't, and that's the problem. That's the frustration.
Well, neither has the management.
No, nobody said anything about it. They just let it run, and that's poor. Like we said. Was it here? Was the professionals? At some stage, we've had a conversation where one of the things that I was very keen on getting across, Newcastle United have lost control of so many narratives. And that's why we're in the mess we're in right now. From a speculation and communication and lack of point of view, we've lost control of the narratives. And that's an easy one to get hold of. Somebody from high up says, Man United, piss off. Simple.
Yep. Steve, the question was about the next set of fixtures. John's trying to give us a bit of optimism. Do you think that'll be the start of a triumphant run?
Well, if it coincides with some of our injured brethren coming back, Barnes, Willock, Wilson, there's 3 for a start. If it looks as though the squad stroke the bench is going to be stronger and give Eddie Howe a greater choice of who's available, who you can put on as a starting 11, and just as importantly, what he can change in game, then yes, there's no reason why it can't be. But I think there's a lot of ifs and buts there, and the ifs and buts rely on the injured players being available, which probably brings us back to another area of the football club that hasn't been doing so well lately, and that's the medical team. Have they been completely overawed by and overtaken by events in terms of the amount of players, the amount of casualties that they've had to contend with? But yeah, I mean, there's no way. And what I'm looking at it, Steve, and I'm thinking, you mentioned we've got the cup next week against Fulham. Then you've got, as you say, I wrote them down as you were talking, Villa, Luton, Forest, Bournemouth and Arsenal. There's only one of those teams that is not playing in the 4th round of the Cup. And what I'm looking at is which of those 4 teams do we stand a chance of drawing in the 5th round? Because it invariably happens, doesn't it? You'll invariably get a draw whereby you suddenly find that you're playing, let's say, Bournemouth twice in a week. You'll get them in the Cup and then you'll get them in the league. Vice versa, the same with Forest or the same with Luton. So you're playing each other. It's bound to happen. But yeah, there's no reason when we went down to Luton and played shockingly bad. We played terrible against Forest. So we've got to redeem ourselves as a squad and as a club that way. We also played very, very poorly against Bournemouth. So there's reason to go out there and actually show the fans that when we're playing a Luton, a Forest and a Bournemouth, that we can actually perform. I think the players themselves will be wanting to do that. They'll be wanting to show that those games were 1-offs or 3-offs, is it? We'll put it that way. And Mitch is right about Arsenal. I mean, despite where they're sitting, They are not. I mean, I watched that game against Man United, against Liverpool last week in the Cup. And I mean, the chances that they had that they just couldn't put away and then got done with sucker punches towards the end. It shows you that all is not well with the structure there. He hasn't quite got the blend right. And we often play really, really well against Arsenal. And we're the sort of team, if we've got our strongest 11 available, that we can go down there and do something else, or can, certainly give them the run for their money. We shouldn't be scared of Arsenal by any stretch of the imagination if we've got our strongest 11. So it all depends, Steve, on I think on whether Eddie is still scratching in the bin trying to choose 11 players, or whether he's got some of the squad back.
Okay, George.
Well, for the optimist, I'm expecting next week to be the start of taking our cup run forward, and off the back of that, we'll get some points in those league games. There's none of those games that aren't winnable. As Steve says, we get a Newcastle United team out that we recognise. There's none of those games that aren't winnable. They all are. It's just a question of getting the right 11 on the pitch, and at least a couple of good ones on the substitutes bench instead of having 3 goalkeepers. It's been absolutely horrendous. The other thing is, somebody mentioned, I think it was Wednesday or another occasion, maybe last week, about the injury thing. Is are they taking too much notice of players saying, "Yeah, I'm fit, I'll play," because that's not new. And that's not new. It used to happen when I played. And I've seen lads who could, when they're coming up the dressing room, they could hardly walk. But once they're in the dressing room, the coach was there. But they were jumping around like linties. Oh, yes, I can play. Well, they used to have a physio called Alec Much. And he used to find out whether they could play or not. He just had a knack of getting them on the table and putting his finger or his thumb in a certain place. And if they yelled, they didn't play. But I'm looking for it, optimistically, for next week to be the starter of the second part of our season, and a better second part.
Yep, I would agree. I think Newcastle will, get some decent results in the next 5 games. I do expect them to get through the next round of the Cup to keep the season alive. But Villa's interesting. Newcastle Luton and Notts Forest one as well. So yeah, I think there's plenty to play for still in the season, with players coming back as well. Jacob Murphy, of course, Harvey Barnes, Joe Willock. It looks as if Wilson may be out of the Fulham game and the Villa game, but could be back after that. So 4 players coming back in the course of the next couple of games. By the time we play Luton and Forest, potentially we might have 4 players back. It'll make a big difference. Will do anyway. Okay, got about 25 minutes left. We've got time for Tweet of the Week. Thanks to everybody who sent them in. Soda Pop Kid, he says, head, cold, sore throat, anything else? Yes, I'm a little hoarse. Thanks, Soda Pop Kid. Star Trek ones. An acorn is actually a tree. Really? In a nutshell, yes.
Oh,
I'm getting inundated. I'm getting inundated with those ones, by the way. I've got enough to last till next year. Fred was lying on his deathbed and came in and knelt gently beside him. She asked, "Do you have any last wishes?" That's very kind. I was just thinking that I'd love a piece of that boiled ham on the table. Now, Fred, said Anne, you know very well that ham's for the funeral.
Oh, dear me.
And this one, bought a can of fly spray from the supermarket today, sprayed it all over myself, and I still can't fly. Very good, mate. Thrilling chase underway here. Pallets wanted. Great. And it was excellent, that from Deddy. And don't fart in an Apple store. Why? They don't have windows.
Oh.
I see Mitch groaning. It's so cool. This used to be a full-size screwdriver. That's how we all felt this week, by the way.
Yeah.
And Mike Dean's 4 sons have angrily denied that their father is a Manchester United fan. Our dad is fair and honest man, said sons Alex, Bobby, Wayne, and Schmeichel. And this letter, hi, sorry about the argument last night. I'm at work till late. Dinner is on the stove. You only have to light it. The gas is already turned on. But there's a few wives wish they'd left a message like that to their husbands. It's sad to see R2D2. He's been lost to a life of drugs. And you'll laugh at anything. Watch this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
D, F, B.
That was made for us, wasn't it? Definitely not ordering any more cookie cutters from Timu anymore. And any holidays booked, Mrs. Goggins? I should say so, Pat. I'm off to Barbados for a month when the combo comes through. Aye, very up to date. I shot the sheriff, but I did not shoot the...
Johnny Depp, the U, a T.
The deputy, yes. Lads, I'm selling Valentine's Day hampers if you're interested. Let us know.
Brave man.
Mother and Jules won't like that. Sent me hearing aid off for repair 3 weeks ago. I've not heard anything since, lads.
I know how he feels.
And Peter Crouch, this is brilliant. We're on a family holiday. Please respect our privacy at this time. This was after the Metro said that hikers had taken footage of what they believe are aliens in Brazil. They moved very quickly and seemed to be around 10 foot tall. Excellent. And whoever is humming the Jaws theme is going to get slapped. Thanks, Ian. And another one of those cartoon ones. Great. We're already running late and then this happens. Partner of the Red Sea, of course. Hello, darling. I'm driving. What's up? Check your rear view mirror.
Oh.
And see you later, love. See you later. Love you. Love you too. Babe, it would mean the world to me if you started putting some X's on the end of your messages. Okay, love you too, Jenny, Natalie, Sarah, Jade, Charlotte, and Megan. Once you see it, you just can't unsee it, lads.
That's true.
That's brilliant, isn't it? And this one, Margaret, for the last 30 years, all you've done is find mistakes in everything I say. 31 years. Freddie Mercury, Venus Williams, and Bruno Mars walk into a bar. They didn't plan it that way.
Oh.
And my pet mouse, Elvis, died today. He was caught in a trap.
There was always a song.
Kitchens by Fred West.
Yes.
And Joey Barton.
And teacher, name a book that made you cry. Me, Algebra. And that awkward moment when someone offers you crack on the train.
Oh,
sweet Jesus.
And, I remember asking my teachers when I would ever need the maths that they were teaching me. Not one, not a single one of them said I would need it to teach my son during a plague. Very, remember that. About that one. And I'd like to thank my neighbour for placing a cover over my car last night when it was frosty. Tarpaulin.
Oh.
And play that funky music.
White boy.
Dear me.
And it works a lot better now that I licked out all the mayonnaise.
Oh, dear me.
Thanks, Jimmy. Jonaga Fjordhoff, this was brilliant. My friend Oyston just went to the South Pole, as Norwegians do. He's a Newcastle supporter, and he brought his Alan Shearer shirt.
He certainly is a Newcastle supporter, having met him, definitely.
That was brilliant, that. And the winner this week, it gives us a chance for a bit of a sing-song. Singer Marty Pello, diagnosed with arthritis. He told our reporters, I feel it in my fingers. I feel it in my toes. Thanks for all your tweets this week. We will have more next week. And keep those singing ones coming so I can practice me, use me vocal cords. There was a question from Mitch earlier on. Does Mitch know why we don't have sponsorship yet for the training ground kit or ground name? It'll be coming, Mitch, won't it?
I think that's it. And I think, again, it's all part of the financial planning ahead. I don't think it's... has it been done now for a reason? I don't know. My personal feeling is everything's geared towards the summer. And they weren't expecting to have to think about dipping into the transfer market in January. Genuinely think the ridiculous amount of injuries that we've had and the situation that we're in was not terribly predictable. And as I've said before, I will be disappointed if they can't be flexible enough to help Eddie out in this window.
Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, I know where they're coming from, but it's one of those things, isn't it? I'm just listening. I'm just reading Mozza's little strap line there. Yeah, Mozza, but Amanda also said we're going to win the Champions League. We're going to win everything, as Simon Jordan keeps throwing back at us. So you have to be careful sometimes when you make statements. But yeah, it's coming, as Mitch says. There's no question that despite what happened with Sports Direct at St James's Park, we will be getting something at St James's Park tagged in front for the ground. We will be getting the training ground named after a sponsor. We will be getting training kit and probably a lot of other type of kit as well, sponsored by different companies. You look at the way Manchester United went about 10 years ago. They've now got something like 58 or 59 different sponsors for various aspects of the club. They've got their various partners. They've got a tractor partner, for goodness sake, a breakfast cereal partner, you name it. They've got partners for it. And that's the commercial world, and that's where Newcastle United will be heading. The only problem is with that sponsorship, with that commercial aspect, you'll get more and more play on, and with it, we want some corporate tickets. So again, it will impact on the everyday fan as less and less space is made available. Something that's been criticised by the away travel fans, how many tickets are going to corporate, and it will grow exponentially as we get more corporate sponsors on. So we're going to have to be prepared for that. It's the change in seasons that we have now with regard to the football club. And just before you bring George in, Steve, can I just say that while some people may think we're criticising other podcasters and criticising other shows, I would recommend everybody has a look at Adam's show that he does on 442. Adam also writes occasionally for True Faith and often on their podcast, who did an excellent analysis of the game the other day and the role that De Bruyne had when he came on. And it was brilliant. But what it showed was that those who just sit and scream at certain players in our squad for being out of position or not doing this or not doing that, or if we concede a goal, not good enough, you then see how Adam then broke it down and explains to you the move that went on, how very few of our players did anything wrong. We stuck to a formation, we stuck to the line, but when you bring on a player like De Bruyne, absolutely quality, world-class footballer, and he can impact the game in the 20 minutes he's on. That's the sort of podcasts that I like to watch, Steve, where you actually learn something. And there are decent people out there who can do that. There are other people who'll just come on and they'll rant and rave.
Listen, there's some great podcasts, but I just think that I think my advice, and take it if you want, don't listen if you don't want to, but I just don't think you're doing yourself any favors when you're putting out clickbait off the back of journalists who are clickbaiting you. Two wrongs don't make a right. These other podcasts are for a certain clientele, certain fan base. You've got to make it different. Point is having 15 Newcastle podcasts all doing the same thing, because people won't watch them. People won't watch them all. People dip in and out of ours. Tonight over 540 people watching. Earlier on there, we've got 530 watching now. We never take it for granted. But we are for a certain. We are aiming and always have done at a certain demographic. We're for the 35s and over, I guess. People who come and watch this podcast. And I can tell because I can go into the YouTube studio and I can see the age group. 85%, I think, are northeast based, 15% around the world. Average age is between 35 and 80. But we've made this channel. When I set this channel up, it's over 18s only. We don't, and youngsters can't watch this channel. And that's the best way to be. They can't comment, they can't use it, because this isn't for youngsters. This channel is not for kids. And there's plenty out there for kids. Adam P, is probably the person who dedicates most of his time for a younger audience. And good luck to them. But us, we're a different kettle of fish. We've been there, got the t-shirt, and we'll continue to talk sense and continue to put our opinion out. The most important thing about this is our opinion. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. You might agree with us. At times you'll disagree. At times we disagree on the screen. But the whole reason for continuing this platform after lockdown was because A, we enjoy it, and B, we just wanted to make sure that people were notified about our opinions, and hopefully we'll give you a bit of a chance to vent your spleen as well. The day that we don't enjoy it, the day that it doesn't work, it'll be the day I just say, right, that's it. And and believe you me, anyone who knows me, in my 52 years, when I've had enough, I just stop and I move on, and that's just the way it goes. And there's been plenty of people on this channel who've come and gone. Has the channel stopped? Has it declined? There's been some very interesting stuff happened in my life over the course of the last 10 years, and things which have probably changed, the direction the channel's gone in slightly, but ultimately, NUFC Matters, the brand that we set up in lockdown, and then me and Mitch and then Steve, when he came along, started off, is still going strong, and we'll always thank you for your support. Yeah. George, just give us obviously give us your opinion on that. We're talking about sponsorships coming in. They will come in due course, won't they?
Well, if they're not working hard on them now as we speak, I want to know what the hell they're doing, because and I would hope that by the summer, as I think as you lads have already indicated, that by the summer there'll be a whole raft of things that will come out about training ground, training strips, all of that kind of thing. And maybe, if not in the summer, shortly afterwards, the ground as well. I mean, I may be the odd one out, but when Ashley faffed on about the ground, if he'd come in and said to me that he was going to put 10 million a year or something into the kitty so he could call it Sports Direct at St. James's Park, I don't think I would have bothered. Because St. James's Park was still there. That's the important thing for me. What goes in front of it is nice, but if it's going to put millions into the coffers, then let's debate it. Let's have a look at it. So I'd be very disappointed if we get through this summer without them announcing a raft of things that are either in the pipeline or going to happen. I mean, we all kind of knew Adidas was coming, and at the finish, it become such an open secret. I had to say, yes, it's happening. And I think that will happen to others as well if they do their homework. So, yeah, for me, it'll happen for the summer, Steve.
Yeah, George is right,
if not in the summer, shortly afterwards.
George is right about the naming of the ground, because that was the catalyst where we went and you found the gates with Sir John, because the whole purpose of us putting those gates up in James's Park was because it had St. James's Park written on. It didn't have Sports Direct at St. James's Park written on. Yeah. And we saw that as important at that particular time.
And still got for it.
I remember doing that. And I mean, for me personally, I really, when I look back on it now and I see where the gates ended up, I mean, it would have been great if our original plan had been able to come off. Those gates facing St. James's Park is a big statement. It would have been great. But I when I walk past or I get driven past those gates, it's nice to look and think we did that. You know what I mean? That was our, that was our effort. Yeah. Michael J says less than 2% of YouTube channels have more than 10,000 followers. 0.8% have more than 50,000. This has 51,500 or so. Yeah, and still growing. And it was always going to slow down. There's only so many Newcastle fans will watch it, and I think our channel slowed a little in subscriptions, mainly because there's been an explosion since the takeover of channels. Lots of content, lots of people doing lots of things. Some people for the right reasons, other people just to get noticed and then to move on. But look, we've just stuck to our narrative and stuck to putting out the same kind of content, and it's as simple as that, really. Nicholas, good evening. Nicholas from the Fallon says we could win the Champions League and some folks would still be unhappy.
Yep.
Nicholas, you're right. We could twist on 21-hour fan base. You
Absolutely.
are right. And Geordie Toomba, good evening. George, even Sunderland helped us out, changing the black cat bar to the black and white bar, he says. So, yes, yeah.
More. Give her enough ammunition to be pissing myself for a decade.
Exactly. They gave us, because we're not going to see them for so long, so they gave us it all under one roof. That's what they did.
Now, if I was Darren Eales, I would have got everything that was up in the Black Cats bar, and I would have brought it back to Newcastle, and I'd have put it up in the Leeds or the Gallagher end. That's what I would have done, just to rub it in even more. I would have got all those banners back, and I would have created our own little stadium of shite, but with all of that up. That's what I would have done.
Okay, we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and managed to get everything in that I needed to. Here is that lovely music. The day I met, we're asked you to send in photographs of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present. Big happy birthday to Adam West. And Mitch got sent this morning. Is it possible to get Steve to post this picture tonight? 3 Amigos, the day I met. It's my son's birthday, Adam West. Cheers. And there he is with the legend, Peter Beardsley. I hope you enjoy your birthday, and you haven't got any football to spoil it either. No results to spoil it, which is even better. And this one was sent in as well from Brian Liddon Oxnard. I met Shay at Cheshire Oaks Retail Park on the 9th of November last year. What a legend. Brian, thank you for sending that in as well. 2 legends tonight for the price of one, and a chance to play what undoubtedly is one of my favourite bits of music, which gets right up people's noses.
And you were stuck on 51,500.
Yeah.
Right, okay. I never thought of that. That's a good point, Steve. It's a good point. Yeah, but then we do come up with some other quality. We do come up with some other quality little segments like this one. Elliot, thanks for this one. My dad keeps buying more land in the Antarctic than he can afford. He has bipolar disorder.
Oh,
jeez.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. That is a wrap on this week's show. Unfortunately, I have other matters to attend to tonight, and I just want to thank everybody in the chat as always. Very entertaining, some good questions, and hopefully you enjoyed a few rants tonight. I know you guys out there do enjoy the rants. Kevin Young says, "Great show, guys. Finally, some tune interaction without civil war." It's clearly been on other streams.
Yeah.
Ian says maybe do a hot tub stream to drive up the numbers. Wow. B. Taylor says this is the absolute best.
I can organise some bunny girls out here.
Yeah, do that. Best channel, you're just great, guys. Thank you. The standout NUFC stream, NUFC Matters, awesome. Well done, all. Thank you. And somebody did ask a question, which I tell you what we'll do. Ian, remind us at Christmas. Christmas later this year, obviously. Which one of you can do the most keepy uppies? We will record it. We'll do a keepy uppy challenge. There is a couple of other things coming. Don't forget the new show's coming next Tuesday, which is good. But in the morning, Ben Jacobs is here, 11 o'clock, to try and dispel some of these horrendous transfer rumours that some people, Mandy Pyle, I've just seen you in the chat, are worried about. Don't worry, Pet. A lot of it's rubbish. Okay, thanks, lads. Take care. See you next week.
All the best. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, everyone.
Good to see.